Hi, my name is Kristen Rule, and I'll be walking you through 2-year credit. Before we get started, please make sure that you have a copy of the Instructor Notes and Student Workbook on hand or open in a separate browser window. You can access these materials through the Resource Library or request a set from our office. Additionally, these materials will be sent to you when you actually sign up to deliver a set of lessons. If you haven't done so already, it's essential that you watch the Getting Started module before going into the classroom. It covers everything you need to know regarding the structure of the Money Sense program, the materials, how to administer the surveys and evaluations, and how to kick off the lessons with the students. Additional information is also available in your Instructor Notes. As a reminder, the Instructor Notes are full of a lot of useful features to help you be successful in the classroom. As you flip through the pages, you'll see that the left side has screenshots of all of the slides, and the right side has all of the discussion notes and facilitation directions that pertain to the slides. There's also space for you to take notes and prep stories that you would like to tell. The bottom of each page is a suggestion for a transition statement to help you move from one set of concepts to the next. Be sure to review each page of the Instructor Notes before you volunteer in the classroom. There's a lot of helpful information in there to assist you in delivering the lesson as smoothly as possible. Now let's walk through all the slides in the Prezi presentation. The 2-year credit lesson is all about credit. We start by covering credit cards, then move into credit scores and credit reports, and wrap up with ways that students can build good credit. We begin each lesson with pre-surveys. Instructions on how to administer the pre-survey are in the Getting Started module and in your Instructor Notes. If you don't receive pre-surveys in the packet of materials you receive for your lessons, then you do not need to administer them and you can skip over this section. The first thing that we do with the students is go over the lesson objectives. Briefly review each of these points so that the students understand what it is that they're going to be getting out of participating in the lesson. We start the lesson by defining what credit is. Have students open up their workbook right away to start our first activity. The student should briefly review the incomplete sentences that are at the top of page 2 of their workbook. See if they can guess what the missing words are. After they've taken some guesses, advance the slide and have them fill in all the missing words. Next, we move into our section on credit cards. We begin with an activity on credit card vocabulary, which sends us right back to the student workbook. Have the students review the terms and definitions in their workbooks. Go term by term and ask them to identify the correct definition and draw a line connecting them. The next thing you'll do with the class is review a sample credit card statement. You can see the student workbook icon with the number 3 up here in the left corner. That's there because there's a copy of the credit card statement in the workbook so that the students can review it easier. As you advance the slide, it'll zoom into the areas that relate to the vocab terms that you just discussed. APR, grace period, available credit, and late payment fee. Next, you review the timeline of a credit card balance and illustrate what the grace period really means. After that, we have our first video. You just hover over it and click to play. If you'd like to skip the video, that's okay too, as all of the concepts are covered in other slides. Students often think that credit cards are free money, so we want to make sure they understand the catch, or what they're really getting into when they start using a credit card. Use this table to illustrate how long it'll take to pay off these example purchases. Have the students guess the total years to pay off, and then after they guess, reveal the answer. Reinforce that paying the minimum is often what keeps people in debt over a long period of time. Now you can use this table to show them that even paying a little bit more than the minimum can save you a ton of time and a lot of interest when you're paying off your debt. This next slide is all about what the benefits of a credit card are, because at this point, a lot of the students are starting to get nervous about ever having one and think that they might not ever want a credit card. So we want to reinforce how credit cards can actually be useful when they're used responsibly. Ask the students what they think the benefits of using a credit card are, and then reveal the answers. Now we'll get into our next activity on page 4 of the workbook. For the Compare Credit Card Offer activity, you can have students work independently, in pairs, or in small groups to compare the different offers and determine which is best. Students should circle the best feature for each category, then see which card has the most circles. That's going to be the card that's the best offer. In this situation, card C is the best credit card offer. Once everyone's had a chance to go through all of the different features and all of the different offers, have the students share out which card they think is best. We finished up our section on credit cards with a few important tips. This slide is also in their workbooks on page 5 as a take-home resource. They don't actually have an activity to do with it. As you can see from the bottom corner of the slide, this is the end of part 1. If you're doing a 2-part lesson, you're going to want to pause at the end of the class period, collect the name tags and workbooks, and ask the educator to hold on to them until you're back in the classroom. If this isn't exactly where you end by the time you get to the end of the class period, that's okay. Just pause wherever you are and then pick up when you're back in the room. If you're doing a full 90-minute lesson at once, you'll just move on to the next slide. We start part 2 with a discussion of good and bad credit and what it even means and why it matters. Illustrate the idea of good versus bad credit by telling a story about a typical car loan. Paint the picture of how 2 people could have different monthly payments and total loan cost for the same car. Talk to 2 students and set the scene that they're best friends starting off in life. They share an apartment, they have the same amount of money saved for a down payment on a car, they have similar tastes, and they want the same car with the same options. They decide to go to the same car dealer to get the exact same car. The car salesperson runs their credit reports and reports back to both, "Great news, you're each approved. Student A, your monthly payment will be $370. Student B, your monthly payment will be $478. Ask the class what they think about that and why student B's payment is higher. If the class isn't on the right track with their answers, suggest that student B must not have managed their credit as well as student A did. You don't need to go into a lot of detail about what that means. This is just an introduction, and the concepts will be covered in coming slides. The important point here is that they start to get the idea that good and bad credit really matters, and it can affect how much you end up spending on large purchases. Our next activity comes on page 5 of the student workbook. See if the students can guess the missing words on the slide before revealing the answers. Have them copy the words into their workbooks. Next, you'll define what a credit report is. Then you'll ask them what they think is on a credit report. After you get some answers, reveal the rest of the slide. Here's another spot where you can reinforce the connection between credit report and credit scores by this line that appears at the bottom of the slide. Next, we have another video about everything that's included in a credit report. And then you'll all review an actual credit report together. The students can find this credit report in their workbook on page 6. It's exactly the same as what they'll see on the screen, but it just makes it a little bit easier for them to read. You'll start to review the different sections of the credit report with the students, and the slide will zoom in as you advance it. Make sure to spend some time on sections 3 and 4 and make sure they understand what it all means, especially the payment history key. Reinforce that every late or missed payment counts on a credit report. Page 7 of the student workbook has a lot more information on what's on a credit report. You don't need to go into detail or cover that page when you're actually working with the students in the classroom. That's just in their workbooks for further information if they want to look back on it. Next, we'll move into the section on credit scores, and we'll start with the basic definition. We've got another video that explains that a little bit further. And then we discuss the FICO score ranges and what they all mean. As you can see, we've got another activity in the student workbook on page 8. This activity is really simple. You're just going to have the students fill in the FICO score ranges off the slide into the table in their workbook. Next, you discuss what's in your credit score, and you'll want to make sure that they really understand how it's all weighted and what's most important. As you can see, payment history and amounts owed make up the majority of what's in your credit score. We'll head back to page 8 of the student workbook now, and here you can see on the bottom of page 8, there's that same pie chart from the slide, but it doesn't have any of the percentages in it. So you want to make sure the students fill in all of those percentages and they understand how it's all weighted. After that, you'll discuss what's not included in a credit score. And you'll start to wrap up this section with another story about credit scores. Here you're going to show them the example of a 30-year mortgage. You don't need to spend any time here explaining how mortgages work or anything like that. You don't need to really get into any detail. But we just want to impress upon them how big of a difference it makes if you've got a good credit score versus a bad credit score. So you'll want to show them the difference in APR, monthly payment, and total interest paid. Use this as another point where you can draw that connection between credit scores and credit reports, and the importance of checking your report annually and making sure there aren't any errors or mistakes that could result in your credit score being lower than it should be. Now we get into who can check your credit and why they'd want to do that. Next up, we have our final activity for this lesson. Ask for 4 role-play volunteers and have them come up to the front of the room. Give each of them a copy of the Loan Officer Activity Script, which you'll get in the packet of materials. There'll be 4 copies of the script. It looks like this, where on the left side of the page, you have the script for the student who's the loan officer, and on the right side of the page, you have the scripts for the students that are playing the loan applicants. All of the other students who aren't participating directly in the role play will use page 9 of their student workbook, which is blank on the right side. Now to go back to the script, you'll have your loan officer student ask the first question, how many times have you applied for credit in the last 6 months? Then you'll have your 3 applicants each answer that question. So student 2 says none, student 3 says 1 time, and student 4 says 1 time. Then the loan officer will move to question 2, and do the same thing. Student 2, student 3, student 4 will answer, then they'll move on to question 3. And they'll keep doing that until they've gotten through the whole script. As the 4 students are up at the front role playing, the rest of the class should be listening and taking notes on what all of the loan applicants say. They'll use this information to answer the questions in the next section. Once the students have gotten through the whole script, you'll advance the slide, which brings up all of the answers. You can pause here for a moment to make sure that the rest of the class is caught up and has everything jotted down in their workbooks. Then, as a whole group, you'll work together to answer the 3 questions on the bottom. They'll use the information from the role play to inform their decisions and the answers that they say. Once you've talked through all of those questions and answers, you can advance the slide and bring up the responses. You then advance the slide again and show that applicant 3 is the best applicant for the loan. We finished this lesson with tips for building good credit history, common mistakes that can hurt your credit, and simple ways to improve your credit. These last 2 slides are also in the student workbook, so they can serve as a great take-home resource. Then we wrap it up with the Go Do It Now checklist. If you have enough time, ask a couple of the students to share out which steps they're going to be working on first. After that, you'll distribute the post-survey and collect it back once all the students have completed it. You'll also hand out the course evaluation, which the students will use to give us feedback on the entire Money Sense program and all of the lessons that they were involved in. Be sure to collect those back and return all of those completed materials back to the Secure Futures office. And that concludes To Your Credit.